This is the Mark V Volkswagen Golf GTI. Produced for the North American market from 2006 to 2009, the GTI is a dynamic hot hatch that delivers a robust 197 horsepower thanks to its groundbreaking 2-liter turbocharged engine. The Mark V set numerous precedents for the GTIs we know and love today, including rapid-fire shifting thanks to the direct-shift gearbox mated to the cutting-edge FSI engine. The Fahrenheit edition, shown here, came with special 18-inch Charleston wheels, a European-tuned suspension, and a beautiful magma orange paint. Only 1,200 were ever built.
Which brings us to number 1172, and sadly, it's just not what it used to be. I just flew to southern Indiana to buy this car, sight unseen, with the intention of driving it over 700 miles home. So in this video, we're gonna look at everything wrong with this Mark V, look at some really common Mark V issues, and we'll see if I got a good deal or paid way too much for this car. So take a guess on what you think I paid for it down in the comments, and at the end of the video, we'll see who guessed right. Now, you've already seen a bit of the magma orange exterior, but let's start on the inside, because this thing is nasty. Let's start with the driver's door. Not only is there some nasty stuff growing inside this door pocket, when I first picked it up, the driver's window and the passenger window were both stuck in the up position. Neither one of the window buttons worked. I was actually able to force the window down with the scan tool, so at least I didn't have to drive 700 miles plus home with both windows up, but now the window's stuck down. So that's going to need some future diagnostication. I did pull the boot back and look at the wiring, and it looks okay, so we may have something more sinister going on behind the panel. Clearly, the biggest offender of this interior is that it's absolutely disgusting. Keep in mind, I was in this car for about 12 straight hours, and for one of those hours, windows up, no air conditioning because the air conditioning doesn't work, breathing in all of this nasty, nasty stuff. The leather on the armrest is completely destroyed. All the soft touch on the bezel of the shifter is peeling. There was a penny in the 12-volt outlet socket, so I had to remove the coin and replace the blown fuse. Also, this aftermarket radio doesn't shut off when you take the key out of the ignition. We have a broken vent up above the radio. Our sunroof doesn't work. Our sunglass holder is broken, and of course, it wouldn't be a Mark V without the headliner completely falling down. Now, this car does have over 220,000 miles on it, so some of this wear and tear, like on the seat, is pretty reasonable. But again, the biggest offender here is that the interior is absolutely disgusting. Now, I mentioned the driver door issues. We have problems on the passenger side door too. It's completely dead. Nothing, absolutely nothing electrical works in this door. Much like the driver's side, I pulled the boot back to inspect the wiring. Nothing obvious that I found, so it's also gonna take some diagnosis. Now, you might be thinking, hey Charles, it's probably just a blown fuse. And I actually thought so too. But after some digging, I found the driver's door and passenger door share the same fused circuit. Since we have stuff that works in the driver's side, it can't just be a blown fuse. We also have a ton of warning lights on in the car. We have a flashing tire pressure light, an airbag light, a light out indicator light, and the check engine light. I'll scan those faults in a little bit. We'll tally up just how many codes we have. So adding to the list of a ton of things that don't work on this car, our rear wiper's not gonna work when we turn it on, but also our hatch doesn't open. So I'm gonna crawl through the back to open the hatch and show you exactly what the problem is. So our issue here is that our wiring harness from the body of the car up into the hatch is damaged and broken. This wire right here should be connected, obviously. The previous owner did some repairs, but clearly not good enough. So that's something we'll have to take this whole thing apart and actually fix so our hatch works. Now, one of the positives of this almost 12-hour drive was I stopped and visited our friends Miltech in Knoxville and picked up a Turb Ski Back exhaust. So we might have a car that half the stuff doesn't work and it looks like a smashed pumpkin, but at least we'll have a cool exhaust on it. Now, you'll see in a minute just the sad state of the headlights of this car. So the previous owner bought some new headlights and gave them to me, which these are eBay headlights and not nearly as disastrous as I had expected. Unfortunately, these are halogens and this car has xenon, so I don't think these are gonna work at all, which is kind of a bummer, but they look nice. All right, so clearly the interior's got a whole bunch of problems, but let's pop the hood and take a look and see what we got going on there. The BPY has a ton of common issues: high pressure fuel pumps, oil leaks, intake manifold faults, turbochargers, the list goes on and on. However, on our BPY, it's pretty good. It recently had a timing belt. We don't really have any top end engine leaks. We do have this wiggle woggle intake, but that's not that big of a deal because if it had the actual engine cover, it would be broken anyway. Really, the main couple of problems that I found were the high pressure fuel pump is actually broken. This may be part of the reason that our check engine light is on. Also, on the fuel sensor, the pin is starting to pull out of the connector. This may also be causing our check engine light. But all in all, everything looks pretty good topside, and it made it well over 700 miles home, so we can't really be too mad at that. We may do some more in-depth teardown and inspection on this engine in the future, but for right now, under the hood seems to be a pretty high point of the car. Now, thankfully, there's nothing crazy under the hood that we need to worry about, but we need to look at it underneath because that may tell us a different story. Under the car, there is potential for unlimited problems. Here are some of the things that we have going on with our Mark V. Here we have some oil leaking from our oil filter housing, which is incredibly common on this engine. It also looks like we have a bit of oil coming from this boost pipe. Our belly pan is also missing, and a lot of this plastic under here is broken. That's actually pretty common on a higher mileage vehicle. On the passenger side, our outer CV boot is split. On the driver's side, this looks to be an aftermarket axle. Generally, a factory Volkswagen axle won't rust like this. Also on the driver's side, our outer tie rod boot is split. There doesn't seem to be any play in the wheel, so we're not gonna worry about that just yet. Back here on the oil pan, where the back of the transmission is, there's all kinds of yuck. This car actually had the DSG replaced in it by the previous owner. And once we get the car back on the ground, I'm gonna show you a funny side effect of that. But it's pretty clear that we have some oil leaking down the backside of our engine. It's also possible this is residual oil from a previous oil repair because the top side looked really clean. One of our undershield pans is broken, which is not really all that big of a deal. Our brakes look like they've seen better days. And while there's not anything obviously broken, this car definitely drives like it's on the original suspension. So most likely a suspension refresh, including new bushings, will happen at some point. All in all, under the car looks pretty good, and thankfully I found no rust. Oh yeah, and this stick that came with the car too. The exterior of the car, on the other hand, we got some problems. First up, we have a complete set of drive-by feel wheels, as demonstrated by how terrible they look. So I gotta know, what's the best looking wheel for a Mark V? Let me know in the comments, because this thing, I don't think these are even worth trying to get fixed. In addition to wheels, looks like we're gonna need some tires too. The front end of this car is where a whole bunch of damage is located. The previous owner hit a deer and never fixed the car, so we're missing a fog light. This headlight is just, look at this, it's just... Not only is it barely attached, but the main headlight beam, it doesn't work. Our grille is missing. It actually did have the lower center grille when I got it, but I touched it and it fell and broke, so I just took it off. On this side, you can see the ring for the xenon just laying in the headlight. Basically, I drove for about 3.5 hours with just this fog light lighting my path. Remember I said there was something goofy with the DSG? Well, when you put the car in park, it doesn't actually hold in park and the car will roll. Oh yeah, we got taillight problems too. As you can see, we got many spots where the clear coat's peeling off. We're fortunate enough to have multiple color oranges. Not only does our sunroof not open, but the alignment of it to the body of the car is absolutely horrible, and it probably wouldn't open right anyway, even if it did work. Also, the key just turns inside the door's lock. When I first put fuel in it, I found out that it doesn't have a gas cap. We also have this. I don't know what more to say about it. All down the passenger side of this car, there's a ton of small dents and dings, and it actually looks like something scuffed the whole right side, which is not a huge priority, but at some point we'll end up fixing. Here's the good thing about this and the back bumper that's all smashed in like somebody rear-ended the car. All that stuff is just Mark V GTI stuff. Yes, it would need to get painted, but we can find a Mark V GTI in a junkyard, swap the parts, and we're good to go. I went ahead and scanned all the faults in the car, and we have a total of 37 faults found in the whole car. From a check engine light for a system lean off idle issue and an evap leak, which is because we're missing our gas cap, to a bunch of airbag faults kind of pointing to the passenger seat and the pod system, which was actually pretty common of this generation too, to refrigerant pressure issues, which makes sense because our air conditioning does not work at all. And it was a pretty miserable hour of driving before I forced that driver's side window down with OBD11. Now, that's a ton of faults, but I don't think I'm gonna go on a deep dive of that just yet. I have a feeling we're gonna bump into more problems than I'm prepared to deal with right now. Now, something I didn't talk about is how it actually does drive. Yeah, it made it 700 miles, but it's got some issues. This may be related to our check engine light. It's down on power. Pathetically down on power. I didn't push it too hard on that really long drive because I didn't want to get stuck in the middle of Lord knows where, Tennessee. So down on power, a lot of creaks and moans and sadness and whatnot in the suspension. So hopefully with that broken high pressure fuel pump and the system lean issue that we had in the fault codes, we'll diagnose that. I think after our suspension refresh, it'll help too. The brakes are a little dodgy as well. And I gotta tell you, not only does the car smell bad, it's miserable to drive because it's really hot. I'm very moist, if you will, from the sweatiness. So clearly we have a ton of issues with this particular Mark V GTI. And I gotta tell you, this is not my favorite generation of GTI. But you can still find good deals on them. They're well documented from both maintenance and repair standpoint. Also, I've actually done a bunch of Mark V videos already, so you can learn how to work on it yourself. So a Mark V might actually make a really good project car like this, or even a daily driver. Now, if you guessed I paid $2,000 for this car, you would have guessed right. And as you saw, we found a ton of issues. A Christmas tree of warning lights in the instrument cluster, split CV boots, leaking oil filter housing, a transmission that doesn't hold park, doors that don't lock, windows that won't work, overall, a disgusting interior, the classic Mark V headliner peeling, and that's just what we saw so far. Once we start digging deeper into this car, we're probably going to find more. In fact, if this were any other Mark V but a Fahrenheit or an R32, this is probably a $500 car. But the fact that it's a Fahrenheit means that I probably paid about what I should. And hey, ultimately, it made a 700+ mile trip from central Indiana or southern Indiana, wherever the heck I was, back to the shop. So can I really be that mad about it? Yes, I can. But I'm not, because I made it home safe. Okay, so this GTI, it needs a lot. The big question I have for you is, do we do the responsible thing and fix and maintain everything and then modify? Or do we say screw it and dive right in to the modifications? But either way, I think we need to call up our man Paulie D, since he and I are now Mark V boys together, and get him involved in this project.
This is my Mark V R32, and even though it has these awful headlights and the wrong front end, the center exit exhaust proves it is an R32. Now this car was cheap, about $3 grand I bought it for, and it is rough. It has a bad transmission and the power steering doesn't work. Lucky for me, I still have the original bumper and it's VR, so it sounds good. The main question is, whose Mark V is rougher, Charles or mine?
So this is the point of the video where I tell you, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss whatever the heck we do to this Fahrenheit GTI. And with that, I'm out. Have an awesome day, and I'll talk to you again next time.